Well, howdy, folks. I've just been thinking about this big entity that's supposed to have created the universe and left a bunch of stories with a bunch of robed guys walking around in sandals. Long time ago. You know, back when they had no idea how things really worked. They had no idea about how the weather works, how sound waves work. They didn't even know how people or animals or plants reproduce, other than the most obvious things. You do the wango tango, and next thing you know, you got a baby. Yeah. Plenty of things they didn't know back then. They had no understanding of the universe. So they invented astrology. They made up stories about designs that they could see in the stars. It tells you very little about galaxies and everything else that really exist. They had no idea about the size of the planet, the shape of the planet, how things work. You know, what happens with certain chemicals. They had no idea of these chemicals. They had the things that they could find and find a use for. Their knowledge was based on usefulness and not on the fine details of why. Now, one thing that separates us in the biggest way from the animals, the other animals besides us, has been our growing ability to try to find solutions to the word why. I think that was one of the first questions that people were asking as they became more human. Why? There's fire. Why? They came up with solutions on how to make fire. You can rub sticks together, or in whatever way they could come up with how, then they would use this how. Why? How? When? The big questions that they had no idea how to answer. So as humanity was trying to live in communities together, in societies, trying to formulate a civilization that would function, people decided to try to answer some of the whys that other people were spending a lot of time asking, but they were just guessing. Now, all you need to do is be somebody that comes up with some answers and get other people to believe you. And that's what all religions had done in the past. They'd proclaim someone a prophet or someone who's in communication with what they believed was God. And the prophet would let people know what God had told them to answer the question of why. But here we are, thousands of years later, and we still have those answers that were written down on scrolls from long ago and were rewritten over and over again, right up to the present. And we have people who want to believe this ancient, if you want to call it knowledge. There are ideas on how things got to be the way they were. Now, does it make a lot of sense to simplify an evolving mentality of mankind to go back to ancient answers when they had no idea about the weather, why it works, how it works? They had no idea about this. And if they came up with a solution in regards to, say, the rain or the heat, and sometimes they would say it was because of the blessing or the punishment of this supreme being they imagined. This video is not to really question the existence or non-existence of this supreme being, but it's to take a look into the minds of what people were thinking a long time ago. People dealt with situations the best they knew how. People tried to explain situations the best they knew how. People tried to answer the question why and when, and all the other simple questions that can be thought of regarding the issues that they were thinking about in a much simpler world. What happens when modern people, with the ability through science and observation by thousands of people over long periods of time, as they try to come up with solutions and try to evaluate these solutions and reevaluate, and a body of knowledge starts to be laid down that contradicts people from thousands of years ago. Where is common sense when you want to say, well, this stuff is all wrong, if it contradicts those guys walking around in robes with sandals out in the desert that had no idea really about molecules and atoms and electricity and sound waves, things we take for granted today. How much time do you want to take studying their answers from thousands of years ago? It's interesting to read, but to base your life on the way people thought thousands of years ago, suppose they said the world probably only existed so long, a couple thousand years. Are you going to believe that today? The proof of trying to believe these ancient stories is now resting on your shoulders. Where modern science and modern people spend a great deal of time and effort and money trying to find what they hope to be the real solutions to the questions of why and when and how. Well, what about the old answers? Are you going to take them for granted just because you want to believe them? Or are you going to question them? And suppose in the writings that contain these old answers, it tells you you're not supposed to question them. You're not supposed to ask or question, how could this be? Why should this be true? It tells you it's true. There's a circular reasoning. The book tells you it's true, so therefore believe it. It tells you if you don't believe it, that somehow you're not a good person then. You're even evil. You're going against the word that these ancient people who wanted some solutions had made up. What should we do into the future? And how many of us will continue to believe the old? Talk to you later, folks.